Hello everyone. In today's video, you will hear the incredible story of Celeste Hawthorne, who, after a serious car accident, had a near-death experience that changed her life forever. During this journey beyond life, Celeste was visited by Archangel Michael, who gave her an urgent warning about a shocking event that is about to happen in September and will impact all of humanity. What he revealed will leave you speechless. So, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any details of this message that the world needs to hear. Get ready for this surprising revelation. My name is Celeste Hawthorne, and I am here to share with you an experience that completely changed my life. I am 36 years old now, but the story I'm going to tell happened 6 years ago when I was 30. At that time, I was a completely different person. I worked as an accountant for a medium-sized company in New Orleans, leading a life that many would consider normal, but inside, I was falling apart. Since I was young, I had always been a sensitive person, prone to periods of introspection and melancholy. However, in the months leading up to the incident I'm about to describe, this tendency had turned into a deep and debilitating depression. I constantly felt exhausted, both physically and emotionally. Every morning, I woke up with a heaviness in my chest, as if an invisible shadow was slowly suffocating me. Looking back, I realized there were countless signs that something was wrong. My relationships were deteriorating, my work performance was declining, and I had lost interest in all the activities that once brought me joy. Yoga, painting, long walks through the French Quarter, all of that had become distant memories of a time when I could still feel something beyond emptiness. But I ignored all those signs. I kept going, pretending everything was fine, convincing myself it was just a passing phase. I didn't want to admit to myself, let alone to others, that I was sinking deeper and deeper into an abyss of despair and hopelessness. It was in this mental state that I reached that fateful Sunday in 2016. A day that started like any other but ended up changing the course of my life in ways I could never have imagined. A day that would take me on a journey beyond the limits of life and death and bring me back with renewed purpose and a profound understanding of the nature of existence. This is my story, a story of loss, redemption, and connection with something greater than ourselves. It's a story that defies logic and reason, but one I feel compelled to share because I believe it carries an important message, not just for me, but for all of humanity. The day began with a feeling of foreboding that I couldn't explain. I woke up with a heavy heart, as if something inside me knew it wouldn't be an ordinary Sunday. The sky was overcast, reflecting my mood, and there was an unusual stillness in the air. Despite the unease I felt, I decided to go ahead with my plans for the day. I had promised myself that I would try to get out more, that I wouldn't let the depression that had been haunting me for months consume me. So, I forced myself to get out of bed, get dressed, and prepare to go out. That's when events began to unfold in a way that, looking back, seems almost predestined. First, my car key broke in the ignition. I remember sitting there in the driver's seat, staring at the broken piece of metal in my hand, feeling a wave of frustration and discouragement wash over me. Any sensible person would have seen this as a sign to go back home, to postpone their plans. But I was determined not to let another day go to waste. I managed to start the car using the spare key and carried on. I hadn't driven even 10 blocks when I heard a loud bang and felt the car veer to one side. A flat tire. Once again, I had the chance to give up, to see these obstacles as warnings from the universe. But my stubbornness, or perhaps my desperation to escape the darkness surrounding me, made me press on. I changed the tire right there on the roadside, my hands trembling slightly as I struggled with the jack and the lug wrench. Sweat dripped down my face, mixing with tears of frustration that I hadn't even realized I was shedding. But I did it, and once again, I set off. It was when I was nearing downtown New Orleans that everything changed. I was approaching an intersection, and the light was green for me. I remember looking both ways, a habit I had developed after years of driving in the city. That's when I saw the car. It came from the right, speeding, completely ignoring the red light. For a brief moment, our eyes met, Me and the driver of the other car. His eyes were glazed, unfocused. In that instant, I knew he was drunk and that there was nothing I could do to avoid what was about to happen. The impact was violent. The sound of metal twisting and glass shattering filled my ears. My body was thrown to the side, the force of the airbag almost suffocating me. The pain was indescribable, as if every bone in my body was being crushed simultaneously. And then, everything went into slow motion. I could see shards of glass floating in the air, reflecting the sunlight that had suddenly broken through the clouds. I could hear the distant screams of people on the street, the sound of sirens approaching. But everything seemed to be happening far away from me. My last awareness was the smell of gasoline and smoke. My last thought was, is this how it ends? And then, darkness enveloped me. What happened next is something I still struggle to put into words. How can I describe an experience that defies everything we believe we know about reality, about life and death? In the moment when the darkness surrounded me, I expected to feel fear, pain, perhaps even panic. But what I felt was peace, a peace so deep and complete that I had never experienced before. It was as if all the weight I had been carrying, all the sadness and anxiety that consumed me, had simply disappeared. Then, I heard a voice. It wasn't a voice in the conventional sense. It didn't come from any specific direction, but it seemed to resonate within me. It was soft, yet incredibly powerful, and it said to me, "You will survive. You are not finished with your journey yet." At that moment, I felt as if I was being pulled out of my body. It was a strange sensation, but somehow not frightening. It was as if I was shedding something heavy and limiting. And then, in the blink of an eye, I was no longer trapped in the wreckage of my car. I was no longer in New Orleans. I found myself in a completely different place and yet strangely familiar. It was the canals of Venice. I had never been to Venice before, but somehow I knew exactly where I was. The beauty of the place was breathtaking. The water in the canals was a crystal clear blue I had never seen before, reflecting the cloudless sky above. The ancient Venetian buildings rose majestically around me, their colorful facades gleaming in the sunlight. What was most surprising was how I felt. All the pain had disappeared. My body, which moments before had been broken and bloodied, was now perfectly intact. In fact, I felt better than I had ever felt in my entire life. I began walking through the narrow streets of Venice, marveling at every detail. I could feel the warmth of the sun on my skin, hear the soft murmur of the water in the canals, smell the scent of the sea mixed with the aroma of freshly baked bread from a nearby bakery. Everything seemed more vivid, more real than anything I had ever experienced. And then, impulsively, I started running. I, who for months could barely drag myself out of bed, was running through the streets of Venice with the energy and joy of a child. I ran over stone bridges, passed through squares filled with pigeons, laughing out loud as my feet hit the ancient cobblestones of the streets. I stopped in a small square and, without thinking twice, began doing yoga. Movements I hadn't been able to do for years flowed naturally, my body bending and stretching with a grace and flexibility I had never had before. And then, I started dancing. I spun and twirled, my arms stretched out to the sky, my heart overflowing with a joy I hadn't known I was capable of feeling. It was as if every movement was a celebration of life, a pure expression of joy and gratitude. It was in that moment that I began to understand. This wasn't just a dream or a hallucination. It was something more, something profound and meaningful. I was experiencing a freedom that went beyond the physical. It was a freedom of the soul. As I danced, I felt a subtle change in the air around me. The sunlight in Venice began to grow more intense, brighter. Gradually, the streets, the canals, the buildings, all began to dissolve into pure light. Suddenly, I found myself surrounded by a brilliance so intense that, under normal circumstances, it would have been blinding. But here, in this state, I could look directly at it without discomfort. In fact, it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Slowly, My eyes began to adjust, and I realized I was no longer in Venice. I was in the cosmos. Around me, stars and galaxies stretched as far as the eye could see. Planets of vibrant colors floated lazily in space. Nebulas painted the void with colors I didn't even know existed, and I no longer had a body, at least not in the conventional sense. It was as if I had become pure consciousness, pure energy. I could move freely through space just by thinking about it. It was an indescribable sensation of freedom and connection with everything around me. Then, I saw them for the first time. 7 enormous lights were approaching me. They were so bright that they seemed to outshine even the stars around them. But somehow I knew that I could look directly at them without fear. As they got closer, I began to perceive that these lights had form. They weren't human forms, nor anything I could describe adequately with earthly words. They were more like patterns of energy, constantly shifting and flowing, but at the same time, maintaining a unique and recognizable essence. And then I knew, with a certainty that came from the depths of my soul, they were angels, beings of pure light, of an energy so ancient and powerful that it made my own existence feel like a mere blink of an eye in comparison. 2 of them stood out and came even closer. Somehow, I knew their names, Michael and Raphael. Michael emanated an energy of protection and power. His presence was like a shield, strong and unwavering. Raphael, on the other hand, radiated an energy of healing and compassion. Being near him was like being enveloped in a loving embrace. Miguel was the first to communicate with me. It wasn't through words, but through thoughts and emotions that flowed directly into my consciousness. "I have been with you," he told me, "during the accident, throughout your entire life. I am your protector." At that moment, his energy was like a balm, soothing all the wounds I carried, not just the physical ones from the accident, but the emotional ones I had accumulated over the years. "I am here to heal you," he told me. "Your body, your mind, your heart. They all need healing." I felt enveloped by his love and compassion. It was as if every cell in my being was being bathed in pure light, restored to a state of perfection I never knew was possible. It was a profound healing experience, not just physical, but emotional and spiritual. All the hurt, fear, and insecurities I had carried seemed to melt away under the light of these divine beings. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly at peace. As I floated there, in awe of the presence of these celestial beings, I sensed a subtle change in the energy around me. Miguel's expression, if I can call it that, the manifestation of his essence, became more serious, more intense. "Celeste," he communicated, his voice resonating not in my ears but within my own consciousness. "There is something you need to know, something that must be shared with humanity." I felt a shiver run through my essence. The gravity in his voice, or rather, in his energy, was palpable. "Humanity is at a crossroads," Miguel continued. "The path you choose now will determine the fate not only of Earth but of the entire cosmos." Images began to flow through my consciousness. I saw Earth from space, beautiful and fragile. I saw the lights of cities, the oceans, the forests. But I also saw shadows spreading, like a darkness threatening to engulf everything. "By the end of September," Miguel went on, "there will be a shocking revelation, something that will change the course of life on Earth. People need to be prepared. They need to seek love and redemption before it's too late." I wanted to ask more, to better understand what this revelation would be, but something told me I wasn't meant to know the details. What mattered was the message itself, the warning. Raphael, who had been silent until then, spoke. "The future is not set in stone, Celeste. Free will is humanity's greatest gift and greatest responsibility. What happens next depends on the choices each individual makes from now on." I felt the weight of that responsibility. It wasn't just about me. It was about all of humanity. Every choice, every action, every thought, it all mattered more than we could ever imagine. "But why me?" I asked, my voice, or rather, my thought, trembling with the magnitude of what was being shared with me. "Why are you telling me this?" Miguel responded with a gentleness that contrasted with his imposing strength. "Because you have been through your own darkness, Celeste. You know the darkness, but you also know the light. Your journey, your struggle, your resilience, all of it has prepared you for this moment." Raphael added, "You have the ability to understand and the compassion to share. Your voice, your story, can touch hearts in a way that few can." I remained silent, absorbing it all. It was an enormous, almost overwhelming responsibility. But at the same time, I felt a strength growing within me, a determination I hadn't felt in a long time. "What should I do?" I finally asked. "Live," Miguel simply replied. "Live with purpose. Share your story. Inspire others to seek the light within themselves." Raphael added, "Heal yourself and help others to heal. Love is the most powerful force in the universe. Spread it." As they spoke, I felt something shifting within me. It was as if each of their words was planting a seed in my soul. Seeds of purpose, of love, of hope. "Remember, Celeste," Miguel concluded, "you are not alone in this mission. We will always be with you, guiding and protecting you." With those words, I felt a wave of love and support, not just from Miguel and Raphael. I would carry this message. I would live with purpose, spread love and light, and do everything in my power to help humanity find its way at this crucial crossroads. Little did I know that this promise would be tested sooner than I imagined. After receiving the warning from Miguel and the support from Raphael, I felt a shift in the energy around me. The cosmos, which had once seemed vast and infinite, began to condense. The stars and galaxies began to fade away, giving way to a soft, welcoming light. At that moment, I realized I was facing a crucial choice. The angels moved back slightly, forming a semicircle around me. I felt they were giving me space to make a decision. "Celeste," Miguel's voice resonated once again in my consciousness. "You are now standing at a crossroads. You can choose to continue your journey with us, moving on to what many would call the other side. Or you can return to Earth to fulfill the mission that has been revealed to you." Raphael gently added, "Both paths have value, both are sacred. The choice is yours, and yours alone." I was stunned by the magnitude of this decision. On one hand, the peace and serenity I felt in that moment were indescribable. The idea of leaving behind all the pain, all the suffering I had experienced on Earth was tempting. Here, in this realm of light and love, I could finally find the rest my soul had longed for. On the other hand, Miguel's words about humanity's crossroads echoed in my mind. I had a mission, a purpose. Could I really turn my back on that? "Before you decide," Raphael said, "allow us to show you something." In the next instant, I found myself back in the canals of Venice. But this time, the experience was different. As I walked through the stone streets, scenes from my life began to unfold around me. I saw myself as a child, laughing and playing in the backyard at home. I saw my parents, their faces full of love and pride. I saw my first days at school, my first friendships, my first loves. But I also saw the hard times, the nights I cried alone, the times I doubted myself, the days when depression seemed like an inescapable shadow. Every memory, good or bad, seemed to have a new meaning now. I could see how each experience shaped me, taught me, prepared me for something greater. "You see, Celeste," Raphael's voice sounded softly, "every moment of your life had a purpose. Every joy, every pain, every triumph, and every fall. All of it is part of who you are." Miguel added, "If you choose to return, you will carry with you all this wisdom, all this experience. You will have the opportunity to use everything you've learned to make a difference." I continued walking through Venice, reflecting on everything I had seen and heard. The decision weighed on my heart. Staying meant eternal peace, but returning meant the chance to make a difference, to fulfill a greater purpose. I stopped on a small bridge over one of the canals. I looked at the reflection in the water and, for the first time since I began this cosmic journey, I saw my own face. But it wasn't the tired, depressed face I had seen in the mirror in recent months. It was a face full of light, of purpose, of love. It was in that moment that I made my decision. I want to go back, I said, my voice, or rather, my thought, firm and resolute. There is so much to be done, so much love to be shared. I can't turn my back on that. I felt a wave of approval and love coming from the angels. Miguel approached, his energy enveloping me like a warm embrace. "You have made a brave choice, Celeste," he said. "Know that we will always be with you, guiding your steps, protecting your path." Raphael added, "Always remember the love you felt here. In moments of doubt or fear, connect with this memory. It will be your strength." With those words, I felt a shift beginning to happen. Venice began to fade around me. The light started to dim. I felt as though I was being pulled back into my body, back to earth. The last thing I heard before everything went dark was Miguel's voice. "Remember, Celeste, you have a purpose. You are loved. You are light." And then, everything went dark. The transition back into my physical body was intense and disorienting. After experiencing the freedom and expansion of the cosmos, returning to the confines of a human body was like trying to squeeze back into a box that was too small. The first thing I felt was pain. A sharp, throbbing pain that seemed to come from every cell in my body. After experiencing the peace and serenity of the other side, the intensity of this physical sensation was almost unbearable. Slowly, I began to become aware of the sounds around me, the constant beeping of machines, muffled voices speaking in urgent tones, the soft sound of hurried footsteps on the linoleum floor. Gradually, I realized I was in a hospital. I tried to open my eyes, but my eyelids felt too heavy. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't respond to my commands. For a moment, panic threatened to overwhelm me. Had I made a mistake by choosing to come back? Would I be trapped in this state of consciousness, unable to communicate? Then I remembered Raphael's words. "Always remember the love you felt here. In moments of doubt or fear, connect with this memory. It will be your strength." I took a deep breath, or at least I tried to, as I realized there was a tube in my throat, and focused on that memory. The unconditional love I felt, the peace I experienced, the sense of being connected to the entire universe. Slowly, I felt the panic recede, and everything seemed like a blur. Gradually, the shapes began to come into focus. I saw the white ceiling of the hospital, the light blue curtains around my bed, and the monitors silently blinking next to me. A nurse noticed I was awake and quickly called a doctor. Soon, I was surrounded by a medical team, all asking questions and running tests. They explained that they would remove the tube from my throat so I could breathe on my own. When I could finally speak, my voice came out hoarse and weak. "How long?" I managed to ask. The doctor looked at me with a mix of surprise and relief. "You've been in a coma for 3 weeks, Miss Hawthorne. There were moments when we weren't sure if you would wake up. Your recovery is, well, some might call it miraculous." Miraculous. The word echoed in my mind. If they knew the journey I had been on, what I had experienced, they might understand the true meaning of that word. In the days that followed, I was informed about the extent of my injuries. Multiple fractures, internal damage, a severe concussion. The doctors didn't understand how I had survived, much less how I was recovering so quickly. But I knew. Every time I closed my eyes, I could feel Raphael's healing energy flowing through me. In moments of intense pain, I remembered Miguel's words about my purpose, and I found the strength to keep going. The physical recovery was challenging. I had to relearn how to perform basic tasks like feeding myself and walking. Every small progress was a victory. Every challenge overcome a reminder of why I had chosen to return. But the true journey, I knew, was just beginning. While my body healed, my mind and spirit were preparing for the mission that awaited me. Miguel's warning about humanity's crossroads echoed constantly in my thoughts. As I regained my strength, I began to plan how I would fulfill my promise, how I would share my experience, how I would spread the message of love and hope that had been entrusted to me. I knew not everyone would believe my story. I knew I would face skepticism and even ridicule. But I also knew there were people out there who needed to hear this message, who were ready to awaken to a new reality. And so, while my body healed in the hospital, my spirit grew stronger. I was ready to begin my new journey, to fulfill the purpose for which I had chosen to return. The road ahead would be long and challenging, but I was not alone. I had the guidance of the angels, the strength of the love I had experienced, and the certainty that every step I took would lead me toward a greater purpose. My new life was just beginning. The months following my discharge from the hospital were a mix of physical challenges and spiritual revelations. Every day was a new discovery, both about my recovering body and the greater purpose that now guided my life. Physical therapy was intense and often painful. "You are light." These words became my mantra, giving me strength when the path seemed too difficult. As my body grew stronger, I began exploring ways to fulfill my mission. I started a journal, documenting not only my physical recovery, but also the memories of my experience on the other side. Every word I wrote was an act of faith, a promise fulfilled to the beings of light who had guided me back. My perspective on life completely changed. The worries that used to consume me, the bills to pay, the pressures of work, the small dramas of daily life, now seemed insignificant in the face of the vastness of what I had experienced. This didn't mean I ignored my earthly responsibilities, but I faced them with a new lightness, a deeper understanding of their place in the grand scheme of things. I began meditating daily, seeking to reconnect with that sense of peace and unity I had experienced in the cosmos. It wasn't always easy. The human mind has a frustrating tendency to wander and get distracted. But each time I managed to touch that energy, I felt renewed and recentered in my purpose. Gradually, I started sharing my story with people close to me. The reaction varied. Some looked at me with skepticism, others with fascination. Some friends drifted away, uncomfortable with the change they perceived in me. Others drew closer, attracted by the peace and purpose I now radiated. One of the first people I shared my experience with was my therapist. She listened attentively, without judgment, and helped me process not only the trauma of the accident but also the profound spiritual transformation I had undergone. Her sessions became a safe space where I could explore the meaning of my experience and how to integrate it into my everyday life. As I grow stronger, both physically and emotionally, I begin to seek ways to reach a wider audience. I start a blog where I share reflections on life, death, and the purpose of existence. To my surprise, the blog quickly gains followers. People from all over the world write to me, sharing their own near-death experiences or simply expressing how my words have touched their lives. I receive invitations to speak to small groups, first in local churches, then in holistic centers, and even at a conference on consciousness studies. Each time I share my story, I feel I am fulfilling a bit more of the purpose for which I chose to return. However, not everything is easy. There are moments of doubt, times when I wonder if I'm simply delusional, if my whole experience was just a trauma-induced dream. In those moments, I close my eyes and reconnect with the memory of the unconditional love I felt, the peace I experienced, and each time, I feel the comforting presence of the beings of light, reminding me that I am not alone on this journey. Miguel's warning about the revelation that will come in September constantly lingers in my mind. I don't know exactly what will happen, but I feel that my work is to prepare people, to open their hearts and minds to the possibility of a reality greater than what our eyes can see. With every person I touch through my story, every heart that opens to the possibility of a greater purpose, I feel I am planting seeds. Seeds of hope, of love, of expanded consciousness. I don't know exactly how these seeds will bloom, but I trust that in some way they are contributing to the great change that is coming. As I prepare to sleep each night, I give thanks for the opportunity to be here, to do this work. And every morning, I wake up with a renewed sense of purpose, ready to face the challenges and opportunities the new day will bring. My journey is far from over. Indeed, I feel it's only just beginning. As the days turn into weeks and the weeks into months, I realize that each moment of my new life is a lesson. Every interaction, every challenge, every joy carries a profound teaching. It's as if my eyes have been opened to a richer and more complex reality, a tapestry of meaning that has always been there, but I was never fully able to see. One of the most important lessons I learn is about the nature of time. Before the accident, I was constantly living in the future, worried about what would come next, anxious about potential problems, always planning the next step. Or I was stuck in the past, brooding over mistakes, regretting missed opportunities. Now, I understand the profound value of the present moment. Every breath becomes an opportunity for connection with the divine. Every human interaction, no matter how mundane it seems, carries the potential for a sacred encounter. I learn to see the beauty in small things, the smile of a stranger on the street, the song of a bird in the morning, the taste of a warm cup of tea. These simple experiences become portals to that sense of unity and love that I experienced in the cosmos. Another crucial lesson is about the nature of love. The love I felt in the presence of the beings of light was unconditional, vast, boundless. I realized that I spent much of my life seeking love from external sources, always feeling that I wasn't enough, that I wasn't worthy. Now, I understand that love is our true nature. It's not something to be earned or deserved, but something to be recognized and cultivated within ourselves. I begin practicing unconditional love in my daily life. It's not easy. Years of conditioning and fear don't disappear overnight. But every time I manage to respond with compassion instead of judgment, every time I see beyond appearances and touch the divine essence in another person, I feel that I am one step closer to living the truth I experienced on the other side. The lesson about the interconnectedness of all things also transforms my worldview. I begin to see how every action, every thought, every choice has an impact that extends far beyond myself. This brings a new sense of responsibility, but also empowerment. I realize that every act of kindness, no matter how small, contributes to raising the collective consciousness. I also learn about the cyclical nature of life. Death, which once terrified me, is now seen as a transition, a passage into another state of being. This doesn't lessen the sadness of loss, but it brings a deeper understanding and a more serene acceptance of the natural flow of existence. One of the most challenging lessons is about the nature of truth. My near-death experience is real to me, as real as the keyboard under my fingers as I write these words. But I understand that to many, it will seem fantastical, impossible to believe. I learned to live with this duality, the internal certainty of my experience and the external skepticism I often encounter. This teaches me about humility and respect for the individual journeys of others. I realize that it's not my role to convince anyone of the truth of my experience. My task is simply to share, to plant seeds, and to trust that those who are ready to hear will find resonance in my words. The lesson about the purpose of life becomes clearer with each passing day. It's not about accumulating material wealth, achieving fame or status. It's about the growth of the soul, about learning to love more fully, about expanding our consciousness to embrace a greater understanding of reality. Every challenge, every joy, every interaction becomes an opportunity for growth and evolution. Perhaps the deepest lesson is about the nature of reality itself. My experience showed me that what we perceive with our physical senses is only a fraction of a much larger and more complex reality. This leaves me with a sense of mystery and wonder. No matter how much I learn, how much I grow, there will always be more to discover, more to experience. As I integrate these lessons into my daily life, I feel transformed. The depression that once consumed me has given way to a deep sense of purpose and connection. The fears that paralyzed me have been replaced by a serene trust in the flow of life. This doesn't mean that life is always easy. I still face challenges, and I still have moments of doubt and fear. But now these moments are seen as opportunities for growth, chances to apply the lessons I've learned and continue evolving. Today, as I sit down to write these words, I feel a mixture of emotions: gratitude for the journey I've experienced, anticipation for what's to come, and a deep sense of responsibility for the work that still needs to be done. Miguel's warning about the events of September constantly lingers in my mind. There are only a few weeks left, and I can't help but wonder what exactly will happen. Will it be a public revelation that will shake the foundations of society? Or will it be something more subtle, a shift in collective consciousness that only the most sensitive will perceive at first? Regardless of what comes to pass, I know my role is to continue the work I've started, to keep sharing my story, to keep spreading the message of love and unity that was entrusted to me. Every day, I strive to live in alignment with the truths I experienced on the other side. My blog continues to grow, reaching people from all corners of the world. I receive daily messages from people who have been touched by my words, who have found hope in moments of darkness, who have started their own journeys of self-discovery inspired by my experience. I've started working on a book, a more complete narrative of my near-death experience and the lessons I've learned. It's a challenging process, finding the words to describe the indescribable, translating transcendent experiences into human language, but I feel it's important work, a way to leave a more permanent record of my journey. I've also begun facilitating support groups for people who have had similar experiences. It's incredibly rewarding to create a safe space where others can share their stories, process their experiences, and find community. Every story I hear expands my own understanding, reminding me that there are as many paths as there are souls in this world. As September approaches, I feel a growing sense of urgency, not of fear or anxiety, but of purpose. I know that, whatever revelation is coming, my work is to help people prepare, not through fear or apocalyptic predictions, but by cultivating love, compassion, and a deeper understanding of our true nature. In my daily meditations, I continue to feel the comforting presence of the beings of light. They don't give me any more details about what's to come, but I feel their constant support, their silent guidance. I've learned to trust this guidance, to follow the subtle impulses I feel in my heart. Looking to the future, I don't know exactly what it holds, but I am sure of my purpose, of my mission. I know that every step I take, every word I write, every person I touch with my story is contributing to something greater. Sometimes, when I look back and see how much my life has changed since the accident, I am amazed. The depressed and hopeless woman I once was seems like a completely different person. And, in a way, she is. That version of me died in that car accident, and the person who returned is fundamentally transformed. But the transformation is not complete. In fact, I feel that it's only just beginning. Each day brings new discoveries, new opportunities for growth, and I know that whatever September brings, it will be just the next chapter in a much larger journey. As I close this account, I want to leave a message for anyone reading these words. You are more than your physical body. You are more than your daily worries, your fears, your self-imposed limitations. You are a unique expression of divine love, a light shining in the cosmos. No matter how dark the night may seem, always remember, you are loved, you have a purpose, you are light. And so, with a heart full of hope and purpose, I continue my journey. The future is uncertain, but I am ready to face it with love, courage, and the certainty that, no matter what happens, we are not alone in this great cosmic adventure. If you enjoyed this beautiful spiritual testimony, please like, comment with your thoughts, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch every new video and help us spread this message to as many people as possible. See you next time.